Tonight with us this evening, I would like to make a few introductions. We are joined by Mayor Woodards, Councilmember Toms, Councilmember Hines, Councilmember Hunter, Councilmember Walker, and Councilmember McCarthy. In addition to our elected officials, we also have Marina Becker from Metro Parks and Linda Stewart, Director of Neighborhood and Community Services. I will now hand the conversation over to Councilmember Toms for some opening remarks. Councilmember Toms.
Thank you, Allison. And I think as part of the technical thing, I believe I'm still frozen. That may be true. I think that's true.
That is true.
Sorry, so apologize for being frozen. Hopefully I'll unfreeze. But I just want to thank Metro Parks and city staff for making this available, and thank all of those for attending. I know, we've had some concerns from folks about whether or not we've been able to have adequate discussions about this. And so tonight's event is formatted in a way that worked very well for our discussion about Sixth and Orchard, in so much as it allows more questions to be asked and more answers to be provided, just opposed to some of the other forums where people merely state something and then no one responds directly back to them. So the format here is geared towards allowing us to get through 3 to 4 to 5 times as many questions, providing answers with the staff that are here from Metro Parks and from the city of Tacoma. And really what we're talking about is an iterative process of how we might set up a warming center at Norpoint, one of our 4 community centers. It's always been a proposal, and as I said, it's an iterative process that we've been listening for the last couple of weeks about concerns, opportunities, interest from citizens. And I believe it is my hope with the discussion tonight, we can continue to add to that. And what I've always asked all along here from both the city staff and from our partners at Metro Parks was to support the most effective management of Norpoint as a warming center to address the concerns of the citizens that have spoken, the concerns of providing safe and effective services to those that need them most, and within the sensibilities of the communities that are supporting these centers. So you'll hear in this presentation the scope of the project, which again, we have taken into consideration the many comments we have, which has actually had some tweaks to it, which I think citizens will find responsive to their concerns. And after this event, as we said, it's going to be recorded and posted on the website, and any outstanding questions that weren't answered in the scope of the time of this will be posted to the city's website. And one thing I wanted to just correct, one citizen spoke to me earlier this morning today about a comment that I made during Tuesday, that I was under the impression that all folks who would or would not be going to any of these warming centers would be tested for drug testing. And in fact, that was incorrect if I did say that they in fact would be tested. That is not a current protocol of warming centers. So I apologize for that mistake of saying that. And I just wanted to say that because someone asked me that. And I think it is a point of how we do other types of centers, but for these acute emergency warming centers, that is in fact not the case. And I apologize if I misspoke. So thank you again for attending, and I look forward to seeing the questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Toms. Please remember again, if you'd like to ask a question, look for the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. As time allows during the meeting, we expect to provide written responses to some of those questions. Questions will also be selected by our moderator for live response by the presenters at the end of this presentation. We may not be able to get to all of your questions this evening, but as Councilmember Toms said, we will be posting an updated FAQ to our website, as well as distributing it to our email list. If you wish to subscribe to receive updates, please email shelters@cityoftacoma.org to be added to that list. Now I will move on to a presentation on using the center at Norpoint as a temporary warming center. The city is currently operating under 2 declarations of emergency that relate to the establishment of warming centers. In May 2017, the city declared a public health state of emergency related to homelessness and encampments. In addition to that state of emergency on homelessness, we have also declared a public health emergency related to COVID-19. During the city's declaration of public health emergency on homelessness and the declaration of a COVID-19 emergency, the city has the authority to quickly adapt policy and allocate funding to provide shelter and resources to people living in encampments in Tacoma, and to mitigate community health and safety risks arising from the COVID-19 pandemic and ongoing homelessness emergencies. We've received a number of questions on the fact that winter comes around each year, and why are we needing to take this approach this year? With required social distancing measures for our traditional shelter providers, they've been inhibited in their normal operations. For example, Tacoma Rescue Mission has had to expand to use both Bellarmine and Holy Rosary to accommodate their normal client capacity. In non-COVID times, our traditional shelter operators are able to expand by 160 beds, but those spaces are not available this year. Thus, the city has been working to provide alternate options. In alignment with Metro Parks, we have worked to open the Eastside Community Center and activated that in October 2020, and actually expanded that to 24/7 operations in November. That center has an overnight capacity of 55 and does serve men and women. We are also working to open a temporary shelter serving single men on Salvation Army property, which is scheduled to be activated by the end of January and have a capacity of 35. In keeping with the city's commitment to assist our most vulnerable residents, we will be activating the center at Norpoint as a temporary warming center. As Councilmember Toms indicated, we have reflected on community feedback, and our plan reflects adjustments to address both the acute need of our homeless population and the unique character of this neighborhood. The warming center capacity will not exceed 25 individuals. The center will serve women and couples only, 18 years and older. The center will provide a managed indoor setting and operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This site will operate through a reservation only, meaning a service provider will need to call ahead to the operator to confirm that there is space available. There will be no walk-up service. The city has arranged with its contracted service providers and the operator to provide on-demand transportation to and from the site. All COVID-19 protocols, including temperature checks, masking, social distancing, and hand washing, will be observed. The operator performs background checks, and no sex offenders are permitted. Participants must comply with behavioral agreements, which include no drug or other substance use on site. Metro Parks has committed to increase security presence on site, and the Tacoma Police Department will be making this a patrol priority while the temporary site is operating. Both temporary warming centers, Eastside and Norpoint, will close at the end of February. We do expect to be able to open in the next 7 to 10 days. In that time, we will finalize the operator contract and prepare the building for use. This includes moving some stored items, bringing in supplies, mats, etc. We have heard from the community an incredible amount of compassion toward our vulnerable residents, and so we will be inviting community participation, either through volunteering or donations. We've seen a very similar outpouring of community support at the East Side, and we are certain that there are Northeast Tacoma residents interested in assisting in the same way here. Through all operations, we will continue to work with the health department to ensure compliance with all recommended guidelines for COVID-19. Excuse me. That concludes the presentation portion of the evening, and I'd like to hand it to our moderator, Kenny, to provide us with the questions that have been appearing in the chat.
Thanks, Allison, and thanks to Council. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. And we have 47 questions, so I'm going to try to get through as many as we can, and we have 300 people at the event today. So thank you so much for all being here. I am going to focus on asking questions today, and I hope you can tell we're trying to get as much content out as we can. If you want to see what questions are coming in, you can push the Q&A button and you can see the questions. Even if we don't get to it today, I'm still putting them in the answered column so we can be transparent so you can see everything. And just so you know, all comments and questions, I'm going to put in a report that I give to staff and to the council so they can go over everything. even if we can't get to it today. And the questions we don't get to will be in that Q&A. So, all right, let's go for it. Allison, and some of these may have been covered in your presentation, Allison, but I just think it's important because people ask that we get to them again. So if they do, forgive me. And this first question is from Elizabeth. Is the city taking into consideration the community comments before making the decision? Are they going to go ahead regardless of community comments?
Thank you, Kenny, and thank you, Elizabeth, for the question. As Councilmember Toms referenced, we did take into consideration the voluminous community feedback we received over the past few weeks, and that is what has caused us to look at a reduced capacity at this site, so we will only be serving 25 individuals. It is also what has caused us and Metro Parks to evaluate the security available on site and make sure that we could commit to on-demand transportation.
Thanks. Next question is from Eric. How many of the people using the warming center are Tacoma residents? I bet they're transient and not Tacoma residents.
Thank you, Kenny, and thank you, Eric. So guests at the warming center will be transported there by Tacoma service providers from encampments within the city of Tacoma. We know from our point in time count that a majority of our residents experiencing homelessness in Tacoma do report their last known address as in Pierce County, so they are local residents.
Thank you, Allison. And just so everybody knows, I'm focusing my questions to Allison, but she has an array of experts who are here. So if Allison needs any support, she'll be passing the mic. And council members, of course, you can always jump in if there's a specific thing that you would like to comment on. So thanks, everybody. All right, next question. Will there be security staff provided around the center? As schools transition back to in-person, many students will begin to be walking through or by Norpoint.
Kenny, thank you for the question. So as I covered in the presentation, Metro Parks has committed to increase security patrol there on site, and we have also worked with the Tacoma
So you guys, everyone is asking great questions. Next question from Daisy. Is this a temporary situation? When do you anticipate schools being open? Meeker middle school kids use this facility for after school activities.
Thank you, Kenny. This is a temporary situation. The city anticipates opening the center within the next 7 to 10 days and does anticipate standing the center down by the end of February. I will pass it to Marina to just talk a little bit about Metro Parks's overall reopening plan for the facility, since there was a reference to after school activities in the facility.
Thank you, Allison. Our plans are to align with the Healthy Washington Start recommendations and requirements that our governor has published. And we anticipate that phase 2 will come sometime in April, and reopening centers is in alignment with phase 2. So that's our target, is to really be in alignment with the Healthy Washington guidelines to begin limited operations again at centers.
Thanks, Allison. Thanks, Marina.
Thank you.
All right, next question. Is the Tacoma Correctional Facility being considered, I assume, for a warming center? If not, why not?
Kenny, I'm imagining that the questioner is referring to the Pierce County Jail and the possible use of the Pierce County Jail as an option for shelter. That facility is managed and owned by Pierce County, and so we would encourage community residents who are interested in that use to approach their county council members.
Thanks, Allison. All right, next question. What is the plan for how to close the center once it's time? I'm assuming about transitioning once it's done being used.
Thank you, Kenny. As I referenced, the city is continuing to look at expanding our shelter options throughout the city. And so we anticipate additional shelter availability towards the end of February. We will, as stated, have transportation on demand from that site, and we will be clear of the site at the end of February to accommodate Metro Parks' need to reactivate that building as long as it's in compliance with the governor's orders.
Great, thank you, Allison. I'm going to call on Councilmember Thoms, who has a comment as well.
Councilmember, you're currently muted.
Sorry about that. You would think I'd know by now. I think just to paint a more clear picture, it is always and has always been we're trying to provide long-term solutions. While this is a very short term and will now end on February 28th, what citizens would see would be, as we move to put these people into additional places that they could go, on that last day, we would actually come transport them back to town into Tacoma, where they would be availing themselves of the rescue mission, nativity house, any of the other services that we would have originally been servicing them with the previous services they were getting. So very much, just so people understand, it just means on the last day, obviously we'll be taking those people that are no longer staying at our warming center back to other services that are mostly located in downtown Tacoma. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And thanks, Mayor, for catching that. Next question is from Sean. Why have you chosen community centers for these warming centers? This decision is impacting thousands of residents to benefit a handful of people experiencing homelessness that do not have a place to sleep. There has to be locations that are not in the middle of residential neighborhoods that could be utilized. This can't be the only choice. If the community centers were open and could not be used, is there not a backup plan? Are there other options?
Thank you, Kenny, and thank you, Sean, I believe was the questioner. So as I talked about, the city has done an extensive look at possible shelter locations, and one of our requirements is to have a willing property owner to be able to make their building available to us for shelter. In this case, Metro Parks was willing to be that partner. We do continue to look for additional options. We do have something, as I mentioned, coming online from the Salvation Army towards the end of January, and we continue to work with both private property owners and faith-based partners to look for additional shelter location. The city of Tacoma is a developed city, so there are very few options where we would be able to place something that would not have an impact on a surrounding community. Councilmember Hines recently had a micro shelter site opened in his district, which is in proximity to schools, grocery stores, parks, very similar to things that residents have asked about here in this Northeast Tacoma location. The same was true when we opened a micro shelter location on the east side, as well as the East Side Warming Center. Again, there are very few options available to us that do not have impact to surrounding neighborhoods.
And Allison, if I can jump in, the other thing I'd also like to add is that if the centers were open, we wouldn't be in COVID time. And the difference here for shelter, and I think Allison said it earlier, is that it's COVID. And so all of our shelters that normally have much larger capacity don't have that capacity. And so even at times when it's really cold, we can put extra cots in extra places to make sure that people are warm and cared for. But because of COVID and because of the CDC guidelines, we're having to make sure that people have the 6 feet and that we're following the CDC guidelines. So that's why our current shelters don't have the capacity this winter to house all of our houseless neighbors. So if we could look at our shelters, we would, but the reason that we're looking at, again, another reason why we're looking at community centers is because of the fact that we don't have any additional space in our current shelters because of COVID.
Thank you, Mayor.
And one more, Kenny, before you move on, I do want to make sure too, we've seen several questions over the last few days about why not this specific facility or that specific facility. I do want to make sure folks are aware, and if you were listening in on council the other night, Councilmember Thoms actually addressed this, but in particular, the Tacoma Dome is not an available facility due to remodel work that is occurring in that facility. And if we were even to look at using the parking lot, that is actually being used for COVID-related measures, such as testing and vaccination at this point in time. So in particular, that facility, I did want to make sure I addressed head on.
Thanks, Allison. Mostly I'm reading people's questions exactly as asked, but I'm seeing a few about transportation. Can you talk a little bit about how someone might get to the center if they need the services?
Yes, transportation will be provided on an on-demand basis. We have 2 contracted providers to provide that service, and they may do so at the request of our homeless outreach team. We also have worked with the operator to be able to provide on-demand transport from the facility to other locations. So that will also be available directly on site there.
Thanks, Allison. All right, we're now at 140 questions. Whew. All right, next one. This is from Blythe. Will this be for men, women, and families, or what is your intent?
Thank you, Blythe. The warming center in this location will serve women and couples 18 years and older.
Thank you. All right, they're coming in so fast. I'm having a hard time reading them before.
Yeah, Kenny, you know what? I'm gonna help you out for some of the questions that we've
Please.
if for some of the questions that we've already answered or that are quick answers, I'm gonna go ahead in the chat and just type those answers so that you don't have to read those answers.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I like having help, thank you. All right, next one. Allison, this question says, you say that you won't allow sex offenders to stay at the center, but if you're not doing background checks, how will you know?
Kenny, thank you for the question. The provider does perform background checks. So that is how we screen out for sex offenders. Background checks are performed by the provider.
Thank you. Next one is from Paul. Will you provide additional resources to the neighborhood and the Center for Law? Oh, Mayor helped me, sorry. I'm gonna ask it anyway. Will you provide additional resources to the neighborhood and the Center for Law Enforcement and Medical Services if they're needed?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor. I need to accept the help is what I'm learning. All right. And will there be a health professional on site as well?
Kenny, there are, so the provider has been trained by the health department to perform COVID-19 temperature checks and necessary screening for those things. If we find that we need to dedicate a medical professional, we can do that. We do have through the dedicated services, and I apologize that my presentation did not address these things. There's both connection to employment, connection to housing, and connection to substance use and mental health counseling if needed for any of those residents on site. And I can report from the east side that we've had several successful transitions from that center to other, to particularly our micro shelter locations so that folks can actually stabilize and get into permanent housing situations.
Thanks, Allison. All right, next question. Is the City of Tacoma or Metro Parks going to pay for thorough cleaning after people experiencing homelessness leave? I understand the need for these services, but this is an active community center.
Thank you, Kenny, for the question. And I will start, and then I will actually turn it over to Marina as well, just so she can address the specific protocols for the facility prior to opening. But the city, under its agreement with Metro Parks, does have a responsibility to return the facility in good repair and condition, and will and also performs regular cleaning to meet our COVID-19 protocols during the time of our contract. And that's something we already have in place at our East Side Warming Center. So Marina, can you talk about that month kind of period between the closure of the Warming Center before opening is anticipated?
Sure, thank you, Allison. We will clean the facility thoroughly. And we have experience with this. We have a lot of facilities that are being used for a number of different activities, and we follow CDC guidelines. We work closely with the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, and we follow all guidelines for deep cleaning and specific cleaning that targets the virus. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Marina. I have a lot of questions about kind of timing and schedule. I'll ask Faye's, but kind of ask you to expand on it. So Faye's question is there a specific time for use, or is it just at night? There are other people asking about curfews or how people get in and out if you leave. How do you get back in, that kind of thing.
Kenny, thank you for the questions. And so the first question, the center will be operated 24/7. So there will be daytime services there on site. Folks will be occupying the building during the day. They will also stay there overnight. But again, remember, this is a reservation only site. So there will not be walk up. That is a difference from what we provide over at the east side. So I do want to make that very, very clear. I believe curfew at this site, and I will correct myself if I'm wrong, but is 7 p.m. and quiet hours are at 10 p.m. And if folks come and go, if they are a registered resident, basically, of the site at that point, they are allowed, of course. They may have employment reasons, medical appointments, other reasons to come and go from the facility, but they will be allowed re-entry, assuming that they have not indicated that they are no longer interested in participating in the program.
And then I'm going to call on Councilmember Toms.
Oh, we lost him. We'll get back to him. Oh, no, he's here.
No, what was there a question for me? I'm sorry.
No,
Oh,
you had your hand raised, so I
Oh,
thought
it was, sorry, Mayor, it's for one of the previous ones.
Okay,
I think
thank
I've
you.
answered
Okay,
five.
thank you.
All right, next one. Oh, I don't know if you know this, but I thought this was an interesting question, Allison. How will new funding announcements today from the Biden administration allow Tacoma to better leverage resources for ongoing community housing assistance?
Allison, if you want, do you want to take that?
I would love it, Mayor, if you would like to step in.
The truth is we don't know yet. The announcements just came out today. There are several reports, and we've been on several calls. I was just on a call a couple hours ago laying out at a high level what funding will be available. And so we don't know exactly how much will come for homelessness. What we do know is that there will be money directed at homelessness. That question was asked today. The other thing is that instead of funding going directly to counties or cities above 500,000, cities like Tacoma will get direct funding if this new package is passed. So certainly this is a priority for the city of Tacoma and this council in addressing this issue. So rest assured that if there's funding available, we will leverage it to provide more assistance to, again, those who are living homeless in our community.
Thanks, Mayor. So glad you're here. Allison, can you speak to, I have a few questions like this, but this question from Katie asked, why does this listening session not include public comment?
Kenny, I am happy to answer that, and I believe Councilmember Toms also addressed it at the beginning of his commentary. This is a format that we've used for several other meetings like this, and feel that it actually allows more opportunity for folks to get their direct questions asked and answered. There were opportunities for public comment both at the Parks Board on Monday night as well as at Council's virtual forum on Tuesday night. So those were both opportunities for public comment. We've also received over 200 email communications from residents, which did factor into our decision-making process to open this center.
Allison, I've been told you've been more than thankful enough to me, so you can skip thanking me if you want. My boss says that. All right, but I appreciate it. I like it. All right, Allison, this is from Kara. What is the procedure for handling guests, so people at the center who do not comply with warming center regulations?
Thank you, Kara. Instead of thank you, Kenny, I will say thank you to Kara for her question. The process will be that the provider will transport them to a shelter location that can better meet their needs. That may be the rescue mission, that may be a behavioral health facility, whatever that is, but we'll actually make that on-demand transportation away from the site if they cannot adhere to the behavioral guidelines.
Thank you. All right, next question. What qualifications does Valeo Vocation have for running a 24-hour homeless center? Do they have training on how to handle folks with mental illness and who are maybe addicted to drugs?
Yes, Vallejo has been providing operator service for us in the same capacity at our Eastside Warming Center. And they have actually been working with individuals who have years of experience operating this type of shelter during Puyallup's freezing nights. Puyallup did not elect to operate their freezing nights program this year. And so that staff and expertise was available to make available to us in operation of these warming centers. So there is quite a bit of experience in operating these types of locations available to us through this contract.
Thanks, Allison. Irene was smart. She got a comment in by making it a question, but I think it still works. My name is Irene, a resident of the East Side, and I support the warming shelter here. That's the comment. But the question is the city making sure that they are being equitable about where they're placing warming centers?
I will start with Irene's question, and then I don't know if there's any council member who might like to make a comment, but council has made a commitment to the distribution of shelters throughout this community. And I referenced earlier, actually, the opening of several facilities throughout the city that we have undertaken in the past few years. When we first started our micro shelter site, that took place in the Hilltop. We then moved to the east side, and we've most recently opened in the north/west end a micro shelter site. As we look at activating the Salvation Army property, that will be in the central portion of the city. And then we are, of course, opening this site here in Northeast Tacoma and have, as you know, the warming center on the east side. We also have a couple of churches that are engaged in temporary shelter, and those are located in both the east side and Hilltop area of Tacoma.
Thanks, Allison. I'm going to combine two questions from Karen and Dee. What kind of donations does the warming center need? How can people get involved? How can people offer up their professional services? People are just kind of curious about supporting this and how they can do that.
And Kenny, again, really want to emphasize that what we heard from Northeast Tacoma residents the other night was a great deal of concern and outpouring of compassion for residents experiencing homelessness in our community, and we very much appreciate that. Folks who are interested in donating, when we are active at the center, we will have contact information available on our website to make direct contact with that location so that you can arrange to provide your donations or to make those volunteer opportunities. Donations include things like clothing, hygiene products, blankets, other kind of things to keep warm, coats, gloves, hats, things like that are very much appreciated.
Thanks, Allison. Can you speak to this question from Katie? When and why did the warming center plan evolve from an overnight emergency respite for inclement weather events to a 24/7 shelter?
Absolutely, Kenny, and I really appreciate that question from Katie. So we found that operating in an inclement weather capacity, it was very difficult for individuals experiencing homelessness to know when were coming and going and coming and going. So we made the decision to transition to that 24/7 operation to provide that stability for those individuals needing to access the service. It also provides us a better ability to help case manage those individuals and get them connected to stable resources.
Thank you. This next question, I'm not sure I understand it, but I'm going to ask it anyway and I think you know more than me, obviously. Where would guests go during daylight hours? What if the guests don't want to stay inside the center and decide to be outdoors instead? Would they be transported back to downtown Tacoma, let's say?
Kenny, and I remind everyone that individuals experiencing homelessness are just like you and I and have the free ability to come and go. However, in this location, they are provided with connection to, again, housing, employment services, and other supportive services. So they're really engaged in activity while they're there at the center. If they need transport to another location in the city, that transport will be provided to them on demand. If there is an issue with loitering or other activity in the neighborhood, neighbors are encouraged to contact public safety to make that awareness so that, again, remember there will be an increased visibility and patrol of the area so that we can keep that activity in check.
Thank you, Allison. We have so many questions, but some of them are repeats, so I'm trying to find newer ones. I am going to kind of ask you to speak to something you already did just because we're getting it so many times. Can you say again why we're not using other spaces like the Tacoma Dome or the Pierce County Jail?
Absolutely. So the city has done an extensive review of all of its available facilities. The Tacoma Dome in particular is not available to us at this moment because it is undergoing remodel. And if folks have also asked about why not use the parking lot. The parking lot is being used for COVID-19 related activities, including testing and eventually vaccination. The Pierce County Jail in particular is under the control of Pierce County, and the Pierce County Council would be the appropriate place for residents to make their inquiry about why we might not make that facility accessible for shelter.
Mayor, I saw you unmute, and then Tom, Councilmember Thoms has his hand raised.
Go ahead and call on Councilmember Tom.
Thank you. Just to follow up on Allison, I think there's a good amount of questions about this, and I think one effective way of addressing this in the future that I have, sort of notionally spoke to some citizens and also to some of my colleagues is perhaps coming up with an assessment of all public facilities, both in the city and the county, and sort of assess where they could or could not be in an emergency continuum and have that list that we could share in the future. And that way, folks can sort of have an idea that some places are more logical than others, more available than others. And I think that would be a valuable exercise. And to the point of the citizen, some of these facilities that, while public, aren't under the control of the city would allow us to have a better, more closely working relationship with the county as it relates to delivery of services. I think that would be a valuable tool for us moving forward. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor, you're still unmuted. Did you have anything? Okay, thank you. All right, next question, Allison. Will cars owned by guests staying at the shelter be allowed to park along the streets outside of Norpoint and Center property?
If individuals have a car that they take with them to the center, we will work with Metro Parks to park that in the parking lot there at the facility. Cars outside the facility on the street or clearly being used for human habitation, we will follow the municipal code with regards to addressing those. So those will not be allowed to occur in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Next one, are occupants allowed to have visitors at the site while staying there? And do they allow RVs and cars to be parked on site?
Because this is by reservation only, there will be no walk-up service or walk-in visitors, so to speak. That's not only due to the service, but also due to the fact of COVID-19 protocols and the capacity that we've agreed to with Metro Parks. So no to visitors in this case. For residents, that doesn't mean, again, that services won't be coming and going. So I don't want to give the impression to the community that they won't see folks coming and going. There may be service providers coming and going from the site. Again, if vehicles have come with residents who are occupying the site and adhering to the behavioral guidelines, those can be parked on site. However, no vehicles may be used for human habitation.
Thank you. This might be a question for council members. This question is from Leah. Is there anyone on this panel who didn't agree with the decision to use Norpoint, or was it unanimous?
So this is not an actual vote of the council. This is an admin. But I don't know if there's anybody on the council who does not support this idea. We did support, or I'll just talk, I supported trying to answer all of the questions and make sure that we were making the community feel as safe as they could and answering all the questions. That's why and responding to the concerns. That's why you see we're at 25 people. We're also focused on a specific population. So I don't think there was, and I'll let the council speak for themselves, but certainly we were interested in making sure that we answered all of the community's questions and took into account all of the concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, yeah, the mayor's exactly right. It didn't come before us as a formal councilmatic action. I think what I always came to was we have 4 community centers in our community, 3 of which are currently being used under the emergency circumstance we find us in. And I've asked all along, both from our staff, Metro Parks, is to support the most effective management if this were to be used as a warming center, to address the concerns of not only those who are seeking the services, but those people providing the services in the community that it's going to be in. And I think that's fair, and that's why we continue to listen and hone this to where we think it's something that can be managed effectively, addressing the most of the concerns that have been shared with us by citizens.
Councilmember McCarthy?
Yeah, I just wanted to add just a couple things, since this is year 5 on the council for me. So many years ago, when we talked about the process for citing after we declared a state emergency for homelessness, we had council debate about what the process would be for citing facilities such as this throughout the community. We had debate about whether or not that should be a councilmatic decision or administrative decision, and what kind of notice would be provided to the community. And where at that point in time, where the council ended up was, because it was a state of emergency, because we wanted the staff to be able to act quickly, even though some of us demurred from our final decision, but that the council as a whole ultimately decided that the city manager's office would be making those decisions so they could respond quickly to the human crisis and make decisions as quick as possible. I just wanted to add to that. One of the things I think we've learned, well, throughout as we've opened these new facilities and locations that haven't been in the downtown core, is that there is probably some room for improvement. At least this is just my 2 cents in how we communicate with the public when we make these decisions, because it feels much like it's a decision that's already been made. But I will say that I know that myself and all my colleagues are committed to a number of things, one of them being to helping out those who are facing homelessness in this community. And it's, I think, was stated at the beginning of the meeting, we're in challenging times, not just because the homelessness situation in Tacoma has, despite our best efforts, continued to rise a bit, but we're in the middle of a pandemic that restricts what we could normally do during the winter months at ordinary shelters. So I do want to say, I think that the concerns I've read through email and that we heard the other night and that are expressed in the questions that are being answered are, I think, legitimate questions to have when you, particularly when you don't know exactly what facility of this nature how it will operate in a community that hasn't had one. So appreciate the opportunity to be here and answer those questions, or at least address that issue regarding decision making and the council's role in decision making. And that's something we might well reevaluate in the future as to how we, not just how we communicate with the public, but what the council's role is in those citing decisions, because we are the elected body directly responsive to our constituents. So thanks
Thank
for
you,
letting me chime
Councilmember.
in.
Councilmember Walker.
Thanks, Kenny. Mayor, I think you really said it well. I just wanted to also add that I really support the staff and the work that they do to vet these buildings and sites around the city. And I know that this is one of many, many. And even in my short time here on council, we've looked at many sites and the vetting process is thorough. So I really trust staff to work through the challenges of each particular site and work with the neighborhood to address concerns. And I know we're not quite ready to announce it, but I'm glad that to know that there's going to be a site in my neighborhood as well coming here soon. So thank you to the staff and to the community. Just know that you're working with great people who are going to make this work for the community. So I'm really optimistic that we've made some changes that'll make this work.
Thank you, Councilmember. Just an update, we now have 330 people at our event. We've had 400 questions submitted, so a lot to get through, but really appreciate everyone being here. Allison, does the city of Tacoma get federal funding for this endeavor?
Yes, Kenny. In this particular case, the city will be using our emergency shelter grants that were provided to us particularly for coronavirus relief. So these are, if you're kind of plugged into federal funding, they're referred to as ESG CV2 funds. So that is how the city is able to make this operate.
Thank you. And I guess there's a follow-up for Marina. Can you talk about, oh, sorry, I lost the question. There's so many of them, so many great questions. I'm just going to paraphrase. It was something about how does this impact Metro Parks financially?
It doesn't, because the city is, we're working with the city to reimburse cost, and the third-party provider Valeo is under contract with the city. We're providing the space. So there's no cost additional to Metro Parks.
All right, thanks, Marina. Allison, next question is from Vass. Who will be responsible to keep the grounds clean?
Bass, thank you for your question. So as part of the use agreement with Metro Parks, the city does have a responsibility to make sure that both the facility and the surrounding area are free of litter, trash, and debris. So we will work with our operator to make sure that's accomplished. We also visit the site regularly with our staff to assess whether there are any issues or concerns, and we speak with Metro Parks. I'm looking at Marina probably almost daily just to make sure that we are having efficient and effective operations, and that we are treating the facilities in the manner in which Metro Parks expects us to.
Thank you. Allison, can you speak to this question? What is the crime rate increase at the East Side warming centers and surrounding community?
Give me 1 second, Kenny, because I have some information that we just received this afternoon.
Allison, while you're looking that up, can we ask Councilmember Hines, who just had a temp site brought to his neighborhood, what the increase in crime and call, because there's several questions about calls for service. Councilmember Hines, can you talk about that while Allison is looking up that information?
No problem, Mayor. Thank you, and thank you for answering the question, Allison. We had our community advisory council meeting last night for the Thames 3 site, and yet again, this site is again 1 block away from my house. It's right adjacent to a senior retirement village. There are schools, there are children. I have 2 small children. It's a commercial area. It's in a residential neighborhood. The distance from downtown, from where this is to where Norpoint Community Center is to downtown, is roughly the same. There was 1 call for service that was not related at all to any of the residents. It was someone who, it's on 6th Avenue. There are people up and down the street that experienced homelessness. There was someone who was having a mental health crisis, and the actual residents called 911 to respond to that. There's been no calls other than that. There's been no calls for medical aid. There are currently 46 residents at that site, and I told the group last night, and I think my neighbors would agree, I didn't think anybody was there, one of the benefits of a 24-hour facility, which I will say about this, is you're not going to see people packing their stuff and walking through your neighborhood every morning and then bringing all their stuff back every night. They will be either at the site or they'll be transported to where they want to go. I would imagine if this is anything like the site by my house, which I think so, you won't notice anything. And then also, I mean, this is only going to be open for a month, and my site's, the one by my house, is open for 2.5 years. So in the time that it's been open is roughly the same amount of time that this will be open. There have been no issues. And I look at it every day.
Thank you, Councilmember Hines, for providing that insight. And I do think it's really important to emphasize that we do receive community feedback on all of our sites. And if there are issues or concerns and we need to address them, we will make that happen. I do want to share with you all that this is 2019 compared to 2020, there was not a significant increase in criminal activity around the East Side Warming Center. There has been an increase in reports of unwanted or suspicious people, calls for medical aid, and wellness or mental health checks. Those are increases that we would expect when we're dealing with a population that has some increased issues with mental health. So that is consistent with what we might expect to see, but no significant increase in criminal activity in the area.
Thank you, everybody. All right, next question. How many people will be on site supervising, Allison?
You know, Kenny, I will actually have to refer to Linda Stewart, who is the Director of Neighborhood and Community Services and has an awareness of the exact contract details for Valeo. So Linda, would you mind stepping in there?
Thank you, Allison. So as we speak, since we're still negotiating the contract, I hate to contradict Allison, but I can tell you that we are going to have 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week management, as well as on-call transportation available for when people either need to come to the site or exit the site. And as soon as we finish negotiating the contract, we'll make sure that we make that information available for the public.
Thanks, Linda. Allison, a few folks missed the timeline. Can you tell us how long the center will be open?
Absolutely. And thank you, Linda, for the reminder that we are still in negotiations. I appreciate that. We anticipate to open the site in the next 7 to 10 days. And as Linda indicated, part of that is finalizing our negotiations with the operator. Once we open, we will close the site by the end of February.
All right, thank you. This question is from Sarah. To volunteer, will we need to have a background check? I.e., if we decide to be in the building doing our volunteering, will it require us to have a background check?
Sarah, that's a very good question, and that is something we will provide further information on once we complete those contract negotiations.
Thank you. Our next question is from Matt. Why not a hotel and pay the bill?
Matt, hotels are an option that some jurisdictions have undertaken and some of our service providers have undertaken to operate during this COVID pandemic. However, we find that the use of hotels has several caveats. One, we have to have a willing hotel owner to allow us to do that. And at present, we are not aware of one. We also have to have a provider who is willing to operate in that manner. And it does require quite a bit of extended staff due to the sightlines and security needs for that type of a facility. It also doesn't necessarily provide the opportunity for the case management services that we're able to provide in the case of a warming center, because there really isn't a facility that allows for that one-on-one counseling, that connection to employment resources, things like that. So at present, we have not utilized hotels with our specific funding.
Thank you, Allison. We have a few questions. People wondering if there's a number they can call if they observe issues.
We will, Kenny, when we complete negotiations and prior to opening, we will post that number to our website. We also have a very robust list of folks who've sent us emails over the past few weeks. And so we will also make sure that we send that phone number out to that list of folks so that they have a direct contact to the site.
Thank you. Another question about funding. This is from Brooke. Why not use the FEMA funds available?
Brooke, thank you for the question. And I'm gonna get a little bit wonky on funding for a minute, so I apologize for folks who are listening. FEMA funds are available at a reimbursement only and only for 75% of the cost. So the city actually has submitted reimbursement to FEMA for some of our other sheltering expenses that we've experienced during this time. That includes the expansion of our micro shelter sites, as well as 24/7 operations for our temporary shelter sites. So we are utilizing FEMA funding, but we have to have dollars on the front end to be able to support that expense. So that's why we're using those ESG funds.
Thank you. This is a question from Sean. Has the Parks Board already approved the request to use this facility?
Kenny, I will turn the question to Marina, but I believe the answer is similar to our council in that the Parks Board does not have an approval process for this, but I'm not quite certain, so I'd ask Marina to step in here.
Thanks, Allison. You are right. Same situation. This doesn't need to go to a vote of the Park Board. We've talked at length with our commissioners, and they are supportive and have been very willing to work with us and to support the city in their request and to support the community.
Thanks, Marina. Thanks, Allison. Next question from Terry. Will this be a smoke-free environment inside and outside as it is at the present time?
Kenny, the facility is smoke-free, as are the grounds. If an individual is needing to smoke a cigarette, they will have to move to the right-of-way away from the facility itself.
Thank you. Oh, this person wants to know, how far away is the Eastside Community Center from a neighborhood or homes?
Oh, I wish Councilmember Ushka was on this call. She's not, but Councilmember Ushka would share with you that in fact the Eastside Community Center is co-located on the same campus as First Creek Middle School. So it is exactly in the middle of a residential neighborhood, very similar to the center at Norpoint. And I do want to share with folks, I actually staff the Human Services Commission, and last night on the Human Services Commission, one of our commissioners shared that they had been in a security meeting with Tacoma Public Schools and actually inquired as to Tacoma Public Schools' impression of the operation of Eastside. And Tacoma Public Schools reported that they had no issues with the operation of that facility, which again is co-located with First Creek Middle School.
Councilmember Hunter, did I see you raise your hand? I know you live in District 4 as well.
Thank you, Kenny. I think Allison has answered the question about the Eastside Center and its location within a neighborhood where we have hundreds of families, and we have the schools as well as very similar to any other neighborhood in Tacoma, including Northeast Tacoma. And just be on that note, we've gotten a number of communications about the conditions around the Eastside neighborhood, and it is just important to remember that the issues in the surrounding neighborhoods existed before that warming situation started. And this council and this city is taking great strides in responding to the disparities in those neighborhoods. But I think it's important to not attribute the challenges, some of the challenges that the Eastside neighborhoods face with the creation of the warming center there. But yes, we do have families and a school right there on the same grounds. Thank you.
And an amazing donut shop right next to there. I love that neighborhood. I'm getting a lot of questions, and I'm getting a few comments of people concerned that we haven't gotten to their questions, and I do apologize. We have 230. We've gone through dozens already, so I have a feeling we're just going to end up missing some questions, but we are committed to getting answers to all these questions. You may find that you have an answer already in the frequently asked questions, and Allison's team is going to be updating that with anything that we get from today. So, all right, let's go to our next one. Oh, I just lost it. Oh, Allison, I have a lot of questions speaking to transportation. They're kind of curious about how we fund that, how expensive that is, how will people be requesting it, that kind of thing.
Thank you, Kenny. Again, so the entire project, both the staffing of the warming center as well as the transportation costs, will be funded through the use of that emergency shelter grant funding. Those are, we will be utilizing contracts with existing providers, 2 of them, and then also working with the operator to provide on-demand transportation as part of their contract. The transport requests, let's say for an individual experiencing homelessness, living in an encampment, or perhaps maybe they've stayed at an overnight shelter but can't get back in, those will be made directly through either our service provider or our homeless outreach team. So that's how those requests will be made. Once they are on site, those individuals may make a request directly to the operator to be transported elsewhere or away from the site. Kenny, the exact costs we will detail in our frequently asked questions once we finish negotiating those contracts.
Okay, thank you. I also have questions from people. Oh, I just lost it. So sorry. Oh, I completely lost it. I apologize. Let's get to the next one. Someone's wondering why there isn't a site near Proctor.
For a warming center, we haven't yet opened a warming center location near Proctor. However, I would remind folks that we did just open Thames 3 at 6th and Orchard in Councilmember Hines' district to provide micro shelter units for the capacity over there is actually 60 individuals, and that's serving women, families, and couples. So there is actually a site in the north and west end. And again, as we continue to look at expanding our warming center options, if folks are aware of a willing property owner, we are certainly willing to speak with them. And Kenny, I would ask maybe Kristen, who's on the call, to put my phone number into the chat, because you're welcome to call me if you're aware of a willing property owner.
Thank you. I found that question I lost last time. This person is wondering, does this mean that the center is going to be open? Will residents be able to use the amenities there? Other residents besides the ones using these services?
During the operation of the center as a temporary warming shelter, no, it will not be open for normal recreational activities. I will ask Marina again to just repeat kind of the timeline and plan for opening that center in case folks missed it.
Sure, thank you, Allison. The timeline for reopening for Recreational Center is going to be in alignment with phase 2 of Healthy Washington recommendations and requirements for our state and for our county. So we're thinking that's going to be in April. Again, we don't know what the pandemic's going to bring us in the next couple of months, but our current plan is to ready the center and reopen as a recreational community center in alignment with phase 2. I wonder, and as I heard you ask the question, if maybe they were asking, are the residents of the temporary shelter going to be able to use the facilities? So I'll address that.
That was also asked, Marina.
Okay, they will not. They will not have access to the exercise equipment or the rock climbing wall or the pool. So that will not be part of the shelter operations.
There was no rock climbing wall when I was a kid. When did that come in? I need to get back over there.
You do in April.
Next question. Allison, A lot of these questions, I don't know if you can answer right now, but people are wanting a little more specificity when it comes to policing and patrolling, like what it's going to look like when you say increased. I think they want a little more, if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if Marina can maybe speak to Metro Parks' commitment in terms of making security presence more visually apparent there on site and what they've committed to in specific. In terms of the Tacoma Police Department, we are committed to making more of a visible presence as available resources allow. We will detail that kind of more in specific as we put those frequently asked questions out so that we make sure we're getting to the heart of that question, Kenny. And Marina, again, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more about Metro Parks' plans.
Sure, thanks. I can add a little bit to it. We always, at all of our parks and facilities, work very closely with the Tacoma Police Department, just to say that. But we also work with a private security firm to do patrols and guard services at all of our over 80 parks and facilities. And so this Norpoint will be put into the rotation. It has not been during the closure because there really hasn't been a need for that. But as the temporary shelter is in operations, we will put that in the rotation for patrol services.
Thanks, Marina. We've already been answering questions for an hour, so we're running out of time. So I'm going to just try to paraphrase a few more questions, and then I'd love if staff could give us a closing statement. And I believe, Mayor, are you able to give some closing statements too? I hope. So Allison, can you speak to why this is being called a warming center? Some people are just seeing this as a shelter.
Yes, Kenny, the use of the term warming center really did start because we started in that, as we talked about, an inclement weather model. We found during the operation of the East Side in that kind of on and off model that really wasn't approachable for clients, nor the best way to stabilize them and get them into what I would actually refer to as true shelter situations. This will be operating only during the coldest part of our year here in January and February. So that's the other reason we call it a warming center. Over at the East Side, they do allow drop-in visitation during the day. And so that is a little bit more accessible from that warming center aspect, but that is where the terminology comes from.
Great, thank you. A lot of questions are kind of related to, are people allowed to sleep in their cars in the parking lot and on the site?
Kenny, thanks again for the question, and I'm going to get in trouble for thanking you, but folks, there is no, and you'll hear me refer to it as human habitation, but that means no living in your vehicles on site, and that is both a condition of our contract with Metro Parks as well as a commitment that the city will make to you. If you do observe that behavior, you're welcome to call the non-emergency number to report that. As I said, we also visit our shelters on a regular basis and are in almost daily contact with Metro Parks. So if we identify an issue, we will resolve that expediently. And I'm sure that other council members on this call can report that we do keep quite a bit of oversight of our shelters to make sure that we limit our impact.
Thanks. Councilmember Thoms, did you have a comment?
Well, just to reiterate that point a bit, in so much as we always are trying to work on that, writ large in the city. And so my hope is that with the increased patrols that Metro Parks is committed to with their private security that they do of their facilities, that we'll just have an uptick if there were to be. I think this center, based on the folks and the limitation of size of 25, the likelihood of that is low. But if in fact it does happen, I would encourage citizens to reach out as they normally would through 311 or other means, if not contacting us on the council directly, that there's vehicles that are camping out.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm skimming 200 questions because I'm hoping I can get something new since we don't have a lot of time left. Sorry, there's so many questions. This question is just a general question. Can Allison, you talk about other measures the city is making to prevent people experiencing homelessness from making encampments.
Absolutely, Kenny. So we do have our homeless outreach team who responds to encampment situations in the city, and being able to provide alternate shelter location is critical to being able to address those encampment locations. In fact, right now, the city is operating under the CDC guidelines for those encampments. So it really, in terms of not dispersing folks during COVID-19, so it's really critical that we have a safe and secure place for folks to go rather than those encampments. The city also contracts for outreach services with a couple of providers, so have enhanced services from what we provide with just our homeless outreach team. And in the most recent budget, council did approve an additional position for our homeless outreach team. So we are expanding services to make sure that we can address those individuals living in encampments, offer them resources, get them connected to shelter, and get them off the street.
Thank you. Allison, can you speak to what communication has been like with King County Police, Federal Way Police? For those who aren't aware, the border of Federal Way is right very close to the center.
Yeah, absolutely, Kenny. Anytime we open a shelter location, we work very closely with the Tacoma Police Department. And in this case, we did ask our Tacoma Police Department partners to reach out to their nearby jurisdictions and just let them know what we were thinking about and working on. And again, have been in close contact with the police department over the past several weeks to make sure that we had a plan that they felt comfortable with, and that we could move forward in this location in a way that was safe for the community.
Thank you. I'm going to see if I can get any last questions before we need to move into closing comments. A lot of repeats. There are people who are kind of wondering, if you're following along in the Q&A, I'm marking things as answered, not because it was answered, but because I want you to be able to see what questions are asked. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible about which questions I'm getting to, which ones we're not able to get to during this event, but I want you to know that I want all your voices to be heard, so I'm trying to publish all of them, although there's still 250 more because they're going faster than I can. Maybe we'll just end with this one before we go into closing comments. This is from Dave. Dave wants to know what we can do to help and make sure members of the community feel safe. Could you speak to that? And maybe, Mayor, if you have any thoughts on that too.
So in terms of helping, again, once we are under contract and in operation, we'll have an available contact for the site to make sure that folks know how not only to get in touch if there's issues and concerns, but also to volunteer or make donation. I think the other thing community members can do is just remember that these folks, although they're experiencing homelessness, they are members of our community, and we have a responsibility to treat them just as we would any housed person in our community. Be polite, be friendly, but if you see behavior that isn't acceptable, please make sure that you're alerting the appropriate public safety resources and contacting the city so that we can address those issues as well. And Mayor, I believe Kenny invited you to make comment as well here.
Allison, I think you answered it perfectly, and I don't need to make an additional comment other than to say we are not going to open this warming center and then walk away. This council, the city government, we will all be here just as we're supporting Councilmember Hines and his neighborhood and Councilmember Ushka on the east side. We will be here, and as Allison said, if you see something, say something. If there's something that needs to be brought to our attention, just don't shrug it off and say, see, I told you that was going to happen. Let us know so that we can make those corrections. We want everyone to feel safe. Those who are unhoused and those whose neighborhoods that this warming center is coming into. So I think, Allison, you said it perfect. I would just add those few things, and I think Councilmember Thoms has a comment as well.
Well, just to add on to that, that despite there being many people in every community and every city across our country that have concerns related to the impacts of many things that go on, but let's say specifically to homeless services. What you also find is other people who are wondering what they can do to better support that. And there have been many, including myself, who I've said, I've already told some of the neighbors over there, I'll come over there and walk through the Norpoint Center and the grounds myself and help pick it up if it's that level of magnitude of challenge. It's all of us working together. And I know there are many people that have said they want to step up to figure out how to help. And I think part of the cleaning piece, whether it's as much as we're worried about or as little as it ends up being or somewhere in between, I think we can all learn from this how to be better at supporting our community. You know, so again, no community, neighborhood, or part of our neighborhoods are being left out. We're merely utilizing merely just one piece of public asset that we have in our community to provide emergency services. And I think, you know, we're learning as we go what is the most effective way of doing it. And frankly, it boils down to long-term systemic challenges that are happening that put people in these situations, cutting of mental health funding and the like. And then also, we don't have enough resources. So it is my hope that as these monies come in, be it through CARES or wherever, we will continually systemically to build in capacity. And then we were on the right trajectory as a community, I believe, in Tacoma prior to COVID, because we were bringing on additional capacity to where we could even be a community that could say, no one in our city has to sleep on the streets because we got capacity to put them somewhere. That is grounded in a legal construct that we cannot move people around unless we have a place to put them. That is done by the courts. But what we're learning here together in real time is how to be more neighborly, how to be more human to our neighbors and help work on it. So I'm very much committed to working with the neighborhood over there, who I understand is very upset, but we will do our part and make sure that it isn't strewn with stuff that people think and may in fact happen. We will get through this together.
Thank you, Councilmember Toms. And Allison, we are out of time for questions, but can you tell us a little bit about next steps, like what will happen to these questions? What is your office going to kind of do to help people get information after this? And then, Mayor, I would love if you could share some closing thoughts.
Yeah, so with all of the questions that we weren't able to answer tonight, Kenny, or that aren't already in our frequently asked questions document, we will be updating that document. Given the volume that I'm seeing, which right now I can see about 225 questions in the Q&A box there, it will take us some time to work through all of those and provide an answer. I'm projecting approximately a week. If folks have questions in the interim, you are welcome to email again the shelters inbox, shelters@cityoftacoma.org. I know that my phone number has been put in the chat. It's 253-591-5119, and I'm happy to have folks give me a call if you'd like to talk on the telephone. In terms of next steps of what you will see, again, in the next 7 to 10 days, we think we can activate this center. That will include us finalizing the contract with the provider, making some changes over at the center itself. I referenced moving around some materials. Also, Marina talked about making sure that areas of the facility are secure so that they are not accessible, and then actually bringing guests onto the site. So that's kind of what you'll see next steps. The city's website where we're posting all of these frequently asked questions is www.cityoftacoma.org/inclement resources. Again, cityoftacoma.org/inclement resources. We will also post a recording of this video as well, so folks can go back and watch it if they'd like. Mayor, I would be happy if you would close us out this evening.
Thank you, Allison. And let me just, sometimes they say you save the best for last, but I'm just going to jump right in and thank Allison so much. This evening, we were all here to support you, but so grateful that you were able to answer all of the questions. You just did an amazing job, and we're so proud of you and the fact that you chose to work here at the City of Tacoma. We don't have a person who has a bigger heart and who works harder for our homeless population than Allison. And it's not just working for those who are homeless, but it's getting people to understand how difficult and how complex the issue is, and how we all have a responsibility to care for everyone. So Allison, thank you. If people who know me know if I was near you, I'd give you a hug right now. But thank you so very much. And Marina, thank you for being here with us this evening on behalf of Metro Parks as well. And to Linda, who leads the department, thank you for the confidence that you've placed in Allison and allowing her to lead out this evening. She just did an incredible job. To everybody who is still on the line, and we know that that people are leaving at this point. As we've said, we are committed to getting you answers to all of your questions and making sure that we make this go as smoothly as it can. I want to thank Councilmember Toms, who represents Northeast Tacoma, and for his, you all need to know that he has truly advocated to on your behalf to help bring understanding to the issue, but to also address all of the concerns that we can address that have been expressed to us. So Councilmember Toms, thank you for all of your hard work. And then to my council colleagues, thank you for being here this evening. We all work for you. And none of us took this job for big pay, because there isn't big pay, and none of us took this job for a lot of power, because there's not a lot of power. But the reality is that all of us took this job because we love this city and we love everyone who lives here. Whether you are in Northeast Tacoma, on the east side, the south end, downtown, the west slope, South Tacoma, wherever, Hilltop, Central Tacoma, wherever you live in this city, we care about you. And I want to be clear, we care about those of you who have a home in this city, and for those of you who live here who don't have access to a home. And we want to do right by everyone. And sometimes that's a tough decision, because sometimes to do right by one group means taking a chance with another. And I know it's hard for us to say, trust us. And I won't say that, but what I will say is, as Councilmember Hines has said, is the proof will be in the pudding. How we deliver this service to our homeless population at the Norpoint Community Center will show you that you heard Allison, how thorough she was this evening and how she could answer every question. These are professionals. These are people who know what they're doing and know how to make things work. And so Allison has shown you tonight, there's a lot of thought and a lot of work that has gone into this. And I want to be really clear with everybody. This is not something we've been planning for 6 months and just sprung it on you. This is something that the moment, and I think I said this at the council meeting last night, that the moment we knew it was a viable option, we reached out to leaders in the Northeast Tacoma neighborhood to let them know we were thinking about this. You all have to understand that it's when we have to address a situation in an emergency and we have an opportunity, we go quickly. You would be amazed at how quickly we've stood up. When willing churches came forward and said, we'd like to do this, how quickly we got into action. I remember when Bellarmine Preparatory School stood up and said, you can use our gym. I think we had that thing open within 48 hours, including inspections and everything. So, and when we got the go, we went. And when we got the go, we let you know as soon as we knew. That's why we didn't have all the answers to the questions. If we had all the answers to the questions, then you would say, you've been planning this all along, but we had not. We absolutely had not. So we're getting you the answers as quickly as we are solidifying them, and we will continue to do that. I understand all of your concerns. I know this is not easy for your neighborhood, but again, the proof will be in the pudding. And I just ask you, our city has gone through a lot of changes this year, and a lot of trials and a lot of tribulations, but I'm just going to ask you to be patient and to be resilient and know that we can do this, and we will do it right. So please know we're not disregarding your concerns. We're taking your concerns into account, which is why we made some of the changes we made, but we are moving forward with opening a warming center. Councilmember Thomas talked about if it had not been for COVID, we were on a path to address this. And he's right, our city adopted the Affordable Housing Action Strategy. And part of that Affordable Housing Action Strategy was helping to find homes and helping to provide more facilities. And then COVID hit. And much like all of you who are just trying to figure it out, we are doing the very same thing as a city. We will get through this. We will get through it together because we all are a part of this great city of destiny here in Tacoma. And again, we will do this. And so we appreciate you all. Continue to ask your questions if they don't get answered. Be sure to go check out the FAQ to make sure that your questions weren't already answered, and we'll continue to add questions and answers as we get new questions. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Be safe. And please take care of yourselves and your families as we strive to take care of everyone in the city and all of the families who need our support. Thank you very much.